way I would frame it is like think of your favorite game. And then imagine it was rendered so that you can never play it again. That's the only part you need to remember. You can ignore me entirely.
Link in the description. Stopkillinggames.com. You don't have to watch his video, my video, nothing. Stopkillinggames.com. It's all there. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah.
Hey, my man. Wait it. Why are you doing that? Stop it.
Well, okay, I guess they have to hold the show then. Although he said he wasn't gonna. He said he was gonna edit stuff, so I'm not sure if this is gonna stay in there or not.
That part's not.
I was acting under the assumption, okay, I might just have to surprise host the show for a minute or two while you're gone. It's like, all right, I'll think of something to talk about.
I'm gonna keep that part in, bro. If you've been on YouTube, I'm sure you've seen the videos talking about how gaming is dead. But what if I told you there was one publisher out there who's actively killing games, murdering them? Yeah, check out this found footage that's totally legit.
Just look at the flowers.
All jokes aside, publishers are actively killing games. Online-only games are popping up everywhere, and when the publisher feels like it, they just revoke the rights, whether you paid for it or not. Today we're going to be talking to Ross Scott from Accursed Farms. He's got 344,000 subscribers, and he is leading the largest campaign for consumer rights and gaming rights. And we're going to see what the campaign's all about. So stick around to the end of the video, and I'll see you all later. I'll let you go ahead and explain, kind of summarize the whole campaign for Stop Killing Games and what your goal is.
My goal with this is, as you just pointed out, the game industry has so many problems. Things that are kind of, maybe they're ripping people off, maybe they're not, or maybe it's like right on that border, or just poor quality control, stuff like that. I'm not even trying to go after that. I'm going after one issue alone in games, and that's trying to take legal action against companies that just destroy the game in any form. From online games in particular, where, you pay money for the game, they've designed it so that they host it, and then when they shut it down, you're left with nothing. See, a lot of people, I think especially younger gamers, just see that as normal. And whereas I'm old enough to know that, no, it wasn't always like this. You can play multiplayer online games from like the 90s, early 2000s now, even though the companies are long dead. Yeah. So that's a choice that they decide to do that. And rarely some companies do patch it at the end of life correctly and let you continue running the game in some form. But so that led me down this rabbit hole of research, and what ended up finding was that options in the United States are really grim. Maybe there's no chance at all, but internationally it's a totally different story, where they just don't know about this, and there are all these consumer rights and options. And the game that sort of kicked this off was just like the right game in the right time, was The Crew, because that had a fair number of players, like 12 million, at least 12 million. But more importantly, it was the company that made it, Ubisoft, is located in France, which has a lot more consumer protection laws than many other countries, and is subject to European Union laws. So that seemed like a perfect candidate to act on. And plus, the game was completely shut down. It wasn't something where like, oh, they disabled a lot of important features, or, the DLC doesn't work, or just the multiplayer doesn't work. Stuff that would be hell to explain to government officials that know nothing about games. It's just that, no, we paid money for the product, they disabled it permanently, and they're keeping the money. Government officials can understand that. So I've been trying to have this campaign. I have a website for it, Stopkillinggames.com, where depending on where you live in the world, you might be able to act on it. Some of it's only for owners of The Crew, because that's just a game. I would have done this for any game. It's just that that's a game in the right place that we can act on. And also to have some other options, I've tried direct government petitions. These are not normal petitions like change.org. These are ones where the government has to respond. Once it gets a certain signature threshold, and in some cases debated in that government's parliament or legislative body. So those are still kind of long shots, but at least in those cases, we're going to get governments to own it one way or the other. So much of the problem with this is it's like it exists between like the gray spaces of the law where, they don't know if it's a good or a service or what laws apply to it.
Right.
So companies can kind of get away with a lot when it's in that space. So.
Yeah.
But that's the general plan. Yeah.
I feel like trying to explain it to, I was trying to explain what this interview was about to my dad. He's in his 60s. So I was trying to explain it to him and I think that's kind of the roadblock that people are going to hit is when you try to break it down.
There's a few analogies. Yeah, well, one I explained. Yeah, one guy's mother emailed me with the message from him. She wasn't sure what this is about, and she was just relaying it. So I said, it's kind of like trying to stop book burning, except for video games.
Right.
And more recently, I learned of a better analogy. Silent films from like 100 years ago. It's been estimated only about 25% of them are still in existence. Because what used to happen is after they would show the film, the studios would just melt down the film for the silver in it. And because they just didn't value it at all. And I was thinking, well, that's actually a perfect analogy for what's going on right now is that, the customers value this stuff, but the studios producing it or the publishing it don't. So they just shut it down and just throw it away. And that's led to a lot of lost films from that era. So
I didn't know. That's really interesting though, because that is a good comparison to what they're doing with games. But I think that's kind of an issue that you run into when games are only online, which started around like the Xbox One release era, because even then you could buy a physical game. I remember when the Xbox One came out, I went and bought an Xbox One. I'd saved up, finally got one. Man, I bought Black Ops 4, I think it was at the time. And I got home and I put the disc in, and I have the disc, and it was like, oh, you have to be online to install the game. And I'm like, why? But I think what you're doing is you're targeting like a specific like problem in this, because if you do make it too convoluted and you go over every little thing that needs to stop in gaming,
I would never
you would never gain any traction at all.
And plus, it's what bothers me the most, because if a game's crappy or they change things, you can kind of decide for yourself whether it's still worth it or not. But this is like, say you like the game, you want to keep playing it. Well, now they're making it impossible, even though you paid for it. And that's accepted as normal from a lot of gamers, but it really isn't in any other product. I mean, if you buy a DVD or a Blu-ray, you expect to be able to watch that whenever you want. I mean, unless you'll scratch the disc or something,
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people don't understand is how preventable this is. It's like even games with, like MMOs with thousands of players, there have been cases of server emulators that can still host thousands of people just on a computer, or if somebody wanted to rent a specialized one or something, if they have the software. Or maybe they couldn't because the software, the servers that are hosting the game, they're just too powerful. Well, if they release that code to the community, they could scale it down so maybe instead of thousands of players, you can still have 50 or something, and that's
that you
a
still
world
have
apart
some
from
access.
Yeah, and especially what you're talking about with like Call of Duty stuff or like arena shooters. I mean, what you can't tell me there's not a way in some form that you can't just host that on some system with like 8 players connecting or something.
Yeah, like a
that,
LAN
even
event.
if
I mean, it's like
I mean, it's the same. The data being sent just isn't that demanding on that level, but or even if it was, it can be adapted. Just scale it down.
I guess what I would hope, and you can, I would imagine you might feel sort of the same on this. what I would hope would come out of what you're doing with the Stop Killing Games website and how you're going after like this one specific group, I hope that would have a snowball effect later on, like in gaming, as far as, okay, this is where it starts. Let's make sure that they're not just taking access to something you own away. And then later on, maybe there's more regulations put in place for the microtransaction side of things, like, for example, the skins in Fortnite or any game really, like Diablo 4 is online only. You don't know when they're going to shut it down. The game's concurrent players go down, they could take it away at any point, and you literally can't play it anymore because it's only online.
Yeah, with the snowball effect, who knows? But I would say if we do have a success, then that might embolden people on some other issues that were like more on the border.
Right.
Like what you were talking about with Fortnite, like, hey, wait a minute, I paid for you advertised this, I bought it, then you switched it.
Yeah.
So maybe once they realize, oh, we can report this to agencies in these countries, they get reports and they're thinking they need to remedy that or else they can't sell the game in that market. And that would mean losing a lot more money like that.
Right, yeah, I feel like they don't necessarily, like, I'm trying to think of how to word this because it's not just the skins thing for me. Like, I guess I'm more concerned about what happens when they fully shut the servers down. All the transactions, like if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars, because there are people out there that do. I don't play Fortnite that much. But you've paid all that money, they shut the servers down, then they don't give you any way to host it or play it on your own. and it's all hidden behind these unregulated EULAs. Like, because there's no way that stuff's regulated. It's like, oh, you read it, so you're responsible. But a 13-year-old kid doesn't.
In the United States, there's a court case that kind of solidified this. It's called Pro CD versus Zeidenberg. And they more or less said that this stuff is complicated, so we're just going to go with whatever the license agreement says, unless it's really obviously breaking the law. Like, and so that's kind of the law of the land, more or less, in the U.S. Like, the only way you would get change in the U.S. would be to lobby, which that just I don't even want to think about how expensive that would be. That's beyond anything I'm going to be able to influence. But no. The thing is, in focusing in other countries, a win there can also mean a win for the United States because, once if it's a known requirement, like say to sell the game in France or Germany, well, that's like tens of millions of people, and they want that market. That's a lot of sales, and this is not that an expensive thing to do if it's a known requirement.
Right.
Again, they used to do this normally, so. If they know they have to patch it once they're done supporting it, they may as well make that patch global because they've already done the work. Like in Australia, which is another country we're trying to push things in.
Right.
It used to be you couldn't get refunds on Steam, but Australia pretty much sued Valve over that in 2014, and they ended up winning. And since then, that's been Steam's global policy. You can refund games within a certain time window if you don't like them. I think it might be like that, where just one big country saying, no, this isn't lawful, the benefits would roll downhill to other countries.
I mean, that's what you would hope for sure.
Yeah, and you made an important point about, like, okay, let's say the law determines, no, these aren't goods, even though they really resemble goods, the way they're being sold, these are services. It's like, well, fine. What service can you buy that doesn't tell you how long you have it? I mean, if you were to rent a car, you know exactly how long you're supposed to have that car for. Or actually, the few games that might have an argument on this that would be hard to approach legally would be something like World of Warcraft, where you pay for 30 days.
Yeah.
And at the end of that 30 days, it's done. You have to either renew or you lose access to most of what you paid for. But they tell you that up front, exactly when it ends.
Yeah, Final Fantasy is like that also.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 11 and 14, I think.
I think it's 14, the one that I was looking at,
But the thing is, a lot of games used to be, a lot of MMOs used to operate like that in like the early 2000s, like late 90s. but they almost all either went free to play or else they died off because the most people don't want to spend money every month on just one game. It's only a small market that can really get away with that. So I'm not worried about every game going subscription only because there's going to be the market's going to be too small for that kind of payment style.
Well, it's kind of like, in my mind, it's kind of like what's happening with the Crew is similar to what Nintendo, kind of, and I'll break that down a little bit more. Yeah. What Nintendo did with like the DS and the Wii U shop, because if you didn't have your games downloaded, you can no longer download them. So if you didn't have like, I think that's an issue with digital content as a whole. Period. If you don't have a big enough SD card or whatever, and you're purchasing digital only games, like I have a Series S, and they shut it down, and I didn't have those games installed because I didn't have storage or something, then I can never access it again. The only difference being that Nintendo loves to resell their games. So most of the time, if they pull a shop down like that, there's going to be an option on the next console or the current console to repurchase those games. But I also think that's scummy too, because if I already bought it, why do I have to buy it again? There should be some sort of licensing agreement that benefits the consumers, because the licensing agreements now really only benefit the companies. They're not held liable for anything at all. They don't have to refund you. They don't have to give you access or anything, which is why I'm so intrigued by what you're doing.
That actually might be working to our advantage in Europe, because the license agreements are so bad. It's making a stronger argument that, wait a minute, Europe has laws on having unfair contracts or agreements, that if it's asking for all these different things, like we can change it at any time, we can shut the game down at any time, the license says you're required to destroy all copies when they shut it down. Yep. Like, seriously, the Crew EULA says that. And so it's like all this stuff together might mean that, okay, they might say this agreement isn't valid, so we're just going to go by what the law says, which is not in a position big game companies want to be in. And yeah, you mentioned Nintendo. I looked it up because I was curious if we could act on that. And it goes back again to where we really needed a big black and white situation, because with Nintendo shutting down the store, it's like you said, if you hadn't downloaded it, then you're in trouble. Or if you were using the multiplayer, you're in trouble. But I checked in Europe, I think Nintendo's headquarters is in Germany. And I asked some German volunteers helping to research it. And best they could tell, this might not even be a violation, because it's just some feature that's being lost. The game, like these games that are single and multiplayer, if they kill the multiplayer, well, that might be what you cared about, but the fact that the single player still technically works means it's a lot harder to act on legally. So it just becomes a mess trying to that's why we're kind of lucky in the sense that, the whole game's dead. Like, it's all just dead.
The crew
people
was
got nothing.
They just
so it's like, okay, we can work with that.
Shut down, opened up the task manager and killed it.
And it's not even just Ubisoft. It's like halfway stuff with Nintendo, like you mentioned, and like EA, I think, might be the king for killing off games.
I was
Blizzard Activision's getting into it.
I was gonna do a little bit more research into. I had back surgery, so it's been rough. But I was gonna do more research into. I was gonna compile a list, and I still might do that before I edit the full video. But I can think of off the top of my head like 5 or 6 live service games that came out in the last 5 years and were completely just shut down. And every single one of those games launched with battle passes and cosmetics and stuff like that, but you can no longer play the game anymore because it was online only. It was solely dependent on their servers. I mean, so the Crew's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, or the perfect catalyst for this, but it's something that's been going on for years. I mean,
I mean, I'm not even sure what the first one was, because we were talking about this problem. You mentioned you noticed it during like early Xbox stuff, because before then you had the MMOs, but they were all or almost all of them, were the subscription fee, where
Right.
you knew exactly when it ended. And I still don't like that either, personally. But you can't claim they're deceiving you at that point, because
they're telling you.
they're telling you straight up when exactly it ends.
But that's the difference.
Whereas yeah, and see, it just kind of hopped the fence over into games that you normally just used to buy, and then you own them and you can run them indefinitely as long as the hardware holds up.
Right. Yeah.
And so the first ones like that, I'm actually still trying to figure it out. The first one I know of might have been Guild Wars. That was in 2005, I believe. And ironically, that one's still going.
Yeah, that would have been before I got online chronically.
Yeah, but that was a one-time purchase. So in other words, you bought it like you'd buy any other game.
I'm gonna look into that for this too.
Yeah, for console is gonna need more help for this sort of thing, because they use it gets a little messier, but really all you would need would be just some ability to sort of enter in like either like a player name or an IP address for them to be able to like wash their hands of the matter, like even the console makers, so that it would really vary. I haven't done enough research on that, but I mean, like you were talking with LAN play earlier, like old Halo.
Yeah.
You can connect it to like other systems. Well, there's no reason you technically couldn't set it up to just connect to an IP address over the internet, and as long as you both have the protocol set up, it could bypass all the other crap that's normally thrown in there. So, but
I never really got into like the games as a service type thing, like World of Warcraft. I mean, I did play it like when it started blowing up and stuff, but I didn't like have an extended life in that world. I know people that
me
did,
neither.
but I do think that the difference is that in an EULA they bury all these shady practices in this 80 paragraph thing. Nobody's gonna read. 99% of people are not reading that. I don't know the actual numbers, but I would say at least probably that much. I don't read them.
Yeah, in my opinion, I feel like I'm not really pursuing that as much, because I kind of don't care if they're telling me it's going to get killed. I just don't want the game killed. I mean, it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
But I think what could help with that, or really, I think anything less than this is if there was an expiration date, like either on the store page or on the box if it's physical, because that will work on people's minds in a way all this other stuff won't. If they're thinking like, whoa, this only lasts 4 years, like what, that wakes people up.
It also makes you make a more conscious decision.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. You honestly can't make an informed decision without that, because what I mentioned earlier, Guild Wars, that's been going over 19 years, whereas other games, like one of the shortest ones I know of is Lawbreakers, which is another like kind of arena shooter kind of thing that lasted a year and then it's just dead. So it's almost like gambling at that point. You're buying the game. Okay, is it going to last a year? Is it going to last decades?
It's like a pump and dump in like cryptocurrency or something. It's like, oh look, dude, we got this tangible product, invest, and then they just pull the rug out. It's like a cash grab.
Yeah, like in my video, and the thing is, they'll sell them alongside games that are going to last indefinitely. As long as your hardware works, the game should work. I mean, I think I mentioned like you can go as far back as, I guess you go to Odyssey, but like Atari from the 70s. You can, if they were kept in good shape, you can still run those. It's not. That's the standard, is that games kind of work indefinitely as long as they're kept in good shape. But yeah, you brought up what I would consider my sort of the number 2 problem for me personally in the industry, which is, fine, let's say for Nintendo, you downloaded the game, it's on your console, but now it's kind of tied to that SSD or that hard drive, and if that dies, your game is gone. Yeah. And to me, that's like number 2 on the list for like, this is not good. That's precarious then.
Because even SD cards and SSDs don't last forever. I mean, and
Yeah.
there's only a slight chance that you can recover the data on them if they get fried or
Oh,
stop
with
working.
SSDs, it's real bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, even for hard drives, I've heard for like Xbox, they'll encrypt part of it to prevent copy protection, so that even if you do restore it, you're not going to be able to get it working again unless it's like exact same console or something like that.
Or tied to
So
their specific online service, like Game
Unfortunately, that's kind of a bridge too far for what I'm going for. But
Right.
hopefully, if we can get a victory here, then that could be built on later.
Pass. Yeah.
Or because that's the other problem where it's not a problem until it is, and by the time it is, it's a lot harder to act on it.
Yeah, and it's definitely getting more and more common for a game to release in an online-only state. And, like,
Yeah.
Diablo 4, to me, is the prime example of that recently because that game's $70. And you pay that $70 for... I mean, that's more than the crew was. How much was the crew? It was like $29.99,
I think it was 60.
Was it 60?
Well,
I never,
yeah, I mean,
I never played it. I remember
2014.
seeing it on there. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was like your standard AAA racing game. You know,
same price. Yeah.
Yeah.
60, 70
I mean, it
bucks.
released a while back, so 60 back. But I mean, I got it a lot cheaper a couple years later.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I remember seeing it on Xbox for like $29.99. So I didn't know what the initial price was. That's not a game that was on my radar when it launched. But
yeah, well,
I mean, 60
and
bucks and then they just take it from you. That's, I mean,
yeah, and that's. See, I think the thing is some people just don't even know. Like some people, because that game came out on physical copies also, and I've seen some reports of people who were just. They genuinely thought because they had the physical copy, they're safe. It's like it's fun. No, know, it's a coaster now. So, but that can kind of go both ways. Where you mentioned digital, like on consoles, that can get pretty rough. But like on stores like GOG or sometimes even on Steam, you can download the install or whatever, back it up on whatever you want, and that's it. You pretty much have it for life now.
right, yeah.
So it's not really a digital versus physical thing. That's just kind of how things have kind of fallen traditionally, but we're kind of seeing that shift more and more where it's like it's either safe or it's not. It matters less how you get the game. You know, it's just what matters is can they stop you from playing it is the question.
I can't believe that bigger YouTubers haven't, like some of these guys with millions of subs haven't reached out to you to get more in depth and tried to spread this more. I mean, like Asmongold reacted to it. I don't know what kind of traffic that would have drove.
That helped. That he probably gave him more attention than anyone else.
Yeah, because that was. I know he's huge. I don't really watch a lot of his content. Occasionally, I'll see it pop up, and I might watch one video or a little bit of one or something. But
pretty much the same with me. I'd seen like 3 or 4 clips from him before he did that. I was thinking, oh, people know him. Good.
But you imagine you get somebody like I did see. I think it was Linus Tech Tips. One of their viewers sent in for them to watch your video or cover it or something in one of their little podcasts they do. And
yeah, they gave it a mention, so that's
that's what I'm saying. Like just every little bit that you can get as far as trying to get it out there, and because gamers are lazy. I mean, just being real, like most people aren't going to devote this kind of time to this.
Yeah, and the thing is, I kind of feel like, they should be if they want to. You shouldn't have to think so hard if you just want to play a game about racing or just some shooter. You should just kind of figure, does this look fun? That really, in a perfect world, that's the only decision you'd really be having to think about with the game. It's like, does this look fun?
Yeah. What am I spending my $70 on this week?
No, like as opposed to like, let's read the contract for an hour or two and just try to decipher the legalese in it to see like, do I get to keep this? And like, okay, well, if I don't, then how long do I get to keep it? Or like to me, that shouldn't even be on the table.
That's a really good point. Like that made my brain go like squirrel when you said that, because you think like reading the legal jargon that they put in the end user license agreements stuff and having to read through those contracts. Like, we're not lawyers, we're gamers. Like, most people, even if they read it, can't even decipher what it means. Like,
oh yeah.
So how that's legally binding if you don't have legal representation or something is wild.
And why do we have to have this standard for games for the end user? I mean, if you go see a movie, you know, you're just kind of trying to decide, oh, does this look like I might enjoy it? Or, okay, maybe this one's not for kids. You want to know that. And, like, you go in and you watch it. Or you want to buy some music. It's like, yeah, do I like the sound of this band? And, like, I mean, this is entertainment. You should, the whole point is to, like, not have to, is to try to enjoy yourself. You don't have to think so hard about it unless
That's
you
a
want
really
to.
good
You know,
point,
like it's
yeah.
a puzzle game. Like, we're not doing corporate mergers here or trying to sue someone or, like, you know, open up a new business or something.
It's just like, I just want to play the game, man.
Yeah.
Let me
I
play
mean,
it.
like, yeah, exactly. It's kind of ridiculous.
The expiration date thing is something that I actually said too a couple weeks ago before I had my surgery when this all started and I went down that rabbit hole. I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily good with you permanently taking a game away for a collection status. I like collecting games. You know, I've got like over 200 games on my Switch. Most of them are digital, but it's still a collection. You know, it's a collection of things. But I'm not opposed to them killing a game necessarily. It's not as bad, in my opinion, if they tell you, like on a jug of milk, this is when it expires. Like, we're going to have, or if there was like a minimum requirement in law, like, this game has to be up. If I'm launching a new online service game, that game has to be up for a minimum of 5 years if it's going to contain microtransactions. I cannot take that game away just because I did a quick pump and dump. Because, I mean, again, that's illegal in cryptocurrency. So, like, if it's illegal there and it's considered fraud, why is it not the same thing? Or, like you said, with movies, why is it not the same thing with gaming? Like, why are they not... You showing up on camera, Athena?
That was fun.
But yeah, why is it not, you know, the same with gaming? Gaming is a form of art to some people. Like, some people play games because they want to see the great cinematics and stuff. Like, I've never personally viewed it like that until I started watching the interviews that you did and heard kind of your take on it. But yeah, when you break it down the way you have, it is art. And it's also a product that I purchased. So how can they just come into my house and take it, basically? It's like buying a vacuum cleaner and Hoover showing up and going, nope, give me that shit back. It's not fair to the consumer at all. And it's like, well, didn't you read that fine print? No. Shouldn't have to.
Yeah, yeah, my stance is a little more radical on it than yours in that I am okay with the game dying if nobody cares about it. Like, you know,
Right, yeah.
if nobody wants to back it up and they just don't care, fine, let it die. I mean, it must have sucked then. Like,
But even
I feel
on
like,
that note, go ahead.
you know,
Go ahead.
However, if at least one person who paid money for it wants to keep it and they like it for whatever reason, then I feel like they should get to keep it and play it if they want. That's my
One
attitude
person.
on it. But
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
That's what I was fixing to
yeah,
say.
if they paid money, okay. The other exception is if the game is completely free, as in this wasn't free to play where they're taking microtransactions. It's just no, it's free. Like
completely
so you never
free,
paid,
no microtransactions.
Yeah,
or
completely
anything.
free.
Right.
Exactly. If it's like that, okay. Then you're not taking people's money. I know even then I don't really like the mean kill, but yeah, if the person if they wanted to set it up that way for some reason, because even then, most truly free games, you can download them and keep them if you want. That's not, but if it was like that, then fine, because then you're not taking people's money. But, but the thing is, the expiration date, see, I don't even like the 5-year minimum because that's still, it's not going to click in enough people's heads, in my opinion. What I want an expiration date because I think that will wake people up in a way that it it won't for other measures because,
It's
like you
big,
said, if it
bold
says,
letters.
yeah, like if you bought the game today and like on the box or on the store page, it says like expires, gives the exact date 2029. You know, they're gonna
Yeah.
think, well, whoa, wait a minute. Plenty will still buy it, but just having that there will, I would bet money it would depress sales. Like they're gonna like lose 10% of what sales that they thought they would get. And the thing is, if it's a known requirement, it's not that expensive to have an end of life plan for the game if it's from the design phase onward. You know, so if they know they need to include this, it's the same work as really any other aspect of the game, like just
Right.
having a networking protocol or making the graphics, that sort of thing. So I think if it was known they had to have an expiration date, most companies would rather just give you an end of life plan at the end so that they never have to put that they never have to put that label on there.
It's gonna take
Because-
it's gonna take legal action before anything like that's
100%,
gonna happen. Though I mean, because game companies especially now just they don't care about anything except making and turning that quick buck. Like there's so many things you could say about game companies now, but I won't go too far on a tangent. But yeah, I mean they're worried about the money. How fast can they make the money? You know, and until there's a repercussion, nothing's
thing.
gonna change.
They'll probably fight it all the way, but this really doesn't have to cost much at all for them. If especially onward, you know, for future games, it doesn't have to cost that much. It's not like loot boxes where that brings in billions for them. Like they would fight that to the bitter ends of the earth.
Oh yeah,
On
EA.
loot boxes. So, you know, so this doesn't have to be some existential threat to their business models, however scummy they are. Again, that's why I'm just trying to keep this so narrow because it bothers me on just like a fundamental level, like especially if I like the game. Like you mentioned earlier, you're not big into live service stuff. I'm generally not either. But it's like every once in a while, one comes along and I'm like, oh, damn, this one looks pretty awesome. Like, damn it. Like, you know, see, that's how they get you. You know, there's not, see, like with The Crew, that was one of those because its big selling point was you can drive across a kind of miniaturized version of the entire continental United States. I'm thinking, man, I would love that.
I learned
like,
so
you know,
much
it's like,
about
oh,
that
I go
game
this.
From this.
Yeah, so it's like, oh man, this is how they get you. You know, it's the see if these games were all crap or if I didn't care about, I wouldn't be doing this. Because, like you said, I'd be lazy. It's just like, well, okay, I can live with that because I'm not playing these games anyways. So
yeah, I mean,
which was kind of.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, that's kind of the whole thing. Like, after hearing about The Crew, I got interested in it. I was like, I didn't know you could drive around the entire U.S., man. Like, that sounds like awesome, you know? Like, because the last racing game I played was Need for Speed Carbon on like the PS2, you know?
Yeah, and like they have like most of the major cities in the U.S. You know, Chicago, New York, L.A., Salt Lake City, Miami, like, and they have like a lot of small towns in between. And in the south, you have swamps, and like in the north, you have mountains and desert in the west. And like, it's not perfect. It has plenty of flaws, but man, like, I love that concept. You know, just keep
really
on
cool.
driving.
Open world on a whole nother level. You're gonna have to vote with your wallet at this point.
Well, actually, yes and no. I mean, I was aware that it was on kind of death row from the beginning for the original. But the thing is, vote with your wallet. I've never seen that work unless the game sucks also. Like, if the game's good or it's enjoyable, they can get away with anything. It's been my experience.
Yeah.
Like you were mentioning Diablo 4. Diablo 3 was the first out of the series to be online only, and that had just record sales. You know, I guess for PS3, they later backpedaled on it, but because you can run that copy offline. Okay, I'll cut you off just because I remembered this time. I was going to say that's the other condition where I don't like it, but I really can't find any fault, is if you get 100% refund. That's happened for a few kind of early launch games, before. So it's like, okay, this sucks. The game got just completely disabled, but if everybody gets their money back who's affected, okay, you can't really argue against that. It's like, that's just a screw. I guess the thing is, that's a screw up, and that's not incentivized then. You're not incentivized to kill the game if you have to give the money back. Whereas if you can kill it and keep all the money, then that's the incentive to just do nothing.
Do you think that's what's going to happen with this campaign potentially, though? Like, do you think when they see the consumer rights issues, people prove that they own the game or whatever, and they just get a refund? I mean, because that's still not really going to affect the industry in that sense. Because only a couple thousand people are going to be able to prove it.
Yeah, no, you would need a critical mass in order to do that. I think, but to answer your question, no, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I figure this is, if I had to bet, I would say we're either going to get a significant win in some country, probably Europe, Australia, or else what I'm calling like the Illuminati ending, where we just get blocked on an almost comical level on every single outlet because we've stumbled into something some larger forces don't want us messing with. Like, like they're using gaming as like a testing ground to see what consumers will tolerate or something like that. But
just
the reason I say no, the reason I say no is because, like, especially in Europe, if they decide, like, yeah, this isn't lawful, well, okay, if this was just a screw-up or a one-off, then, yeah, they might offer refunds or just for that one company. But when they see this is, like, systemic, like, okay, they did this for this game, they did this for this one, this other company's doing it, they're going to think, okay, no, we got to start pressing charges here against the companies or fine them or something, because it's systemic, and that's not... just doing individual refunds isn't going to be enough to stop them from continuing to break the law on it. So,
I think Riders Republic will probably be the next Ubisoft one that happens to.
Maybe the Division isn't going to be too far off, I don't think.
Yeah, I had prior to this, I actually had Ubisoft Plus. Everything, you got to have a subscription for everything now, man. It's insane. So, like, I had Ubisoft Plus prior to this, and like I was playing Riders Republic because I had wanted that game for years, and I guess I just didn't think in the back of my head, like, this game's been out forever, man. It's online only, and I actually bought the game. So now knowing a little bit more about how Ubisoft handles these games, that kind of concerns me. Like,
oh yeah,
because I never paid
that's
attention
the problem.
to
It's
it,
not.
really.
It's the good games that or even if they're not slam dunk, stuff that you like about them a lot. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why I would have done this for any game, even if I didn't care for it, because I know there's going to be something down the line that's going to get made that I'll be interested in. That's going to be in the crosshairs for it.
So, what other countries are you trying to get this into? I know you got it in.
Okay.
I haven't looked at the website recently.
I'll speed run it. Australia, we're doing a lot. Brazil, we might. Brazil's kind of a wild card, but it's looking more promising. Canada and the UK, we are acting on, but it's only petitions because we weren't seeing any opening in just existing law. So those are kind of more long shots. A lot of stuff is in the European Union, especially Germany and France, but the EU as a whole has laws that regard all the member countries. Like, if we get a victory there, that could be checkmate. Yeah. Because that's going to be such an enormous market that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's looking. I like. See, unless it just gets comical how much resistance there is on this, I think it's looking promising because the confusion on this is the laws they're not sure whether to treat these as goods or services. Because if they're goods, well, then you're having your product taken away from you after you bought it. So that's obviously a violation. And if they're services, they're not telling you how long these games last.
Yeah.
So that's so again, if we can get that, I feel like that's not as good as the goods argument, but if that's all there is,
Right.
if we can get an expiration date, I think that solves a lot of this because it'll wake gamers up and companies will know it will wake gamers up and they would rather just, there are multiple reasons to have an end of life plan down because one, it would hurt sales. Two, let's say the game's a flop and they don't want to support it for longer than a year or two. Well, then they can if they have an end of life plan, whereas if there's a mandatory minimum, it's like, oh man, we have to keep the servers going for this for 5 years. That's a drain on our income.
Yeah.
So, or let's say it's a runaway hit. They don't want that to have that expectation that it's, only going to be there for 5 years. No, this is, we hit gold, so we want to run this for 10 years, 15 years, whatever we can get it, whatever people will keep playing it for. So,
which there should be some renewal process on that note to, like, okay, we didn't know the game was going to be this successful. Let's extend that expiration date, but there should be some kind of where they can only extend it out for so long or whatever. Or once they do extend it out, it's legally binding.
Yeah, well, and the point is, the point is, if they have an end of life plan, then they don't need to because the game's gonna work in some fashion whenever they shut it down. I mean, obviously, you're very likely to have a better experience while they're supporting it, and customers are gonna want to know that. But in my mind, that's such a smaller issue. It's like, okay,
it is.
If they support it 2 years or 10. As long as you can run the game, it's like mission accomplished for me. Like somebody else could deal with the smaller issues like that.
Deal with the other crap later. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like when you were talking about how much trouble it is, with everything being like a live service or pass. Man, this might affect me more because I tend to sit out a lot of stuff and just wait till games are cheap. So like I'm on like a kind of. I'm on a perpetual lag time, like it's, and so by the time it comes around to me, it's like, okay, well, the game's received like 20 patches. It's a lot cheaper. It's like, okay, now I might check it out.
Yep. I got Riders Republic when it released was like $70 or something, and I got it for I think 20.
Yeah,
I'm the same way, especially now with all the medical crap from the last 3 years. Like I can't afford to dump money onto a game on release day anymore.
I have spent more as gifts for other people, but I think for myself personally, I've never spent more than 15 on a game in my life. Like I'm a bottom feeder. Like I only buy when there's big sales. Like, it's like if there's not a big sale going on, I don't buy games. I just stockpile and just play what I have.
I hope you don't play Nintendo because that never happens.
Even like the old stuff, you can't get it for 15 or.
Nah, man, dude. Now even the older stuff. I guess it depends on where you get it. Like if you're like a physical collector, you're paying even more than whatever the.
I mean, not the rare stuff, but let's say like the 5 to 10 years old.
So like Zelda Breath of the Wild released when the Switch came out, which was 2017. And that game is still $60, and when it goes on sale, when it goes on 55. Sale, if that's exactly right. I don't even have to tell you. It's like $5 off, bro. They're like, look at this amazing Nintendo Switch. They'll have a big banner on the eShop. They're like,
man,
look at this. Yeah, it's Nintendo never sells anything. But I'm like you. I'm a bottom feeder too. I get everything when it's like 50 to 60 to 70% off. So.
Yeah, and even then the percentage, that means less over time because if they've permanently lowered the price after like 4 years, then the percentage drop.
Yep. So you got Brazil's
but at least
maybe. Go ahead.
At least you have the choice then. You can decide how badly do you want to play that game. So it's like, that's what drives me insane about this. It's like, you can't do anything to have the game not destroyed, so it's like an inverse of everything.
They own the rights
you're used
to it.
With the.
So.
Yeah, well, although again, maybe not in the United States because it's just a wasteland as far as ownership there. But the thing is, yeah, you don't own. They own the rights to it, but in most countries, you own your individual copy. So
Right.
you're allowed to. So yeah, you don't own the rights to the franchise. In fact, that's what that sentence means that you see in a bunch of EULAs, that this game is licensed, not sold. That means, yeah, you didn't buy the right Zelda by buying
Right.
your copy
Right.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
It's-
you
it-
can't duplicate them and sell them, but you can sell your copy of it, or you can retain your copy of the game. So.
Hey, bro, I think Nintendo would probably even come after you for Nintendo's weird though.
Oh
It's a
yeah,
totally
like
different-
well, Nintendo. One thing they're infamous for is going after fan games.
or mods to
Yeah.
a copy that's only you using it. So like you mod Pokemon or something, and you play it for your stream, and then it's like, oh, bro, no, DMC aid, take it down.
They've gone after people for modding their own individual copies.
Oh yeah, bro.
Oh, boy.
That's my problem. Is that like I'm chronically online, especially lately because of the surgery. Like that's all I do is sit there and watch YouTube. So yeah, Nintendo has went after a lot of obviously emulation websites because there's a fine line between emulation and piracy. But then at the same time, like they've had people take their YouTube videos down of them playing a version of a Nintendo game that they modded. This person didn't release any of the source files or sell the mod or any services to mod it for someone else. They were just playing a modded version of a game they own on their channel, and Nintendo made them take the video down. Like I wouldn't
Yeah,
get into all that,
it's-
but yeah, it's happened several times.
There might be. I'd say depending on the country you're in. If the United States, even the United States, that might be a maybe thing. But if you're doing that, you probably don't have access to like a high-end lawyer who can stand up to that, because I mean, how much would that cost? It's so
To fight $1 billion company.
yeah, because sometimes you can get. Well, I know on my channel I've fought a few copyright claims on my videos before, or everything I was doing was within fair use of the law.
Right.
And the thing is, showing that modded Nintendo game would be, however, depending on how they went after them, maybe they could come after them for violating the user license agreement. So if you handed that footage off to somebody else and say, "Oh, I didn't record this," then you probably could fight back. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take this as
Yeah.
gospel, but
It's not legal advice,
you
guys.
probably could fight that back. However, they might come at you from another angle, which they might win. It gets confusing. And you mentioned emulation stuff. If I know there's that Yuzu one, which I don't know the details on it, but there's a court case, I believe it's Sony versus Bleem, where no, you can legally reverse engineer and make emulators for systems. But what's
Right.
not legal is like distributing the games for those systems. So there's a difference between like an emulator that somebody's made and programmed together, which I can't even imagine how much brain power that takes
More
to do
than I
something
have.
like that. But yeah, same here. However, if you're distributing ROMs for those games that are just copies of the games, yeah, you're playing with fire. So it's
You can't make
yeah,
money
they
off
can
of it.
come after you with that.
But so the U.S. is kind of a losing battle for you. You're saying Brazil's a maybe. You got the U.K. and Canada.
So those
France,
are kind of long shots, but we'll see.
and
It's-
Australia.
Australia's, I give the best odds on EU or some EU country and Australia. I think Brazil, we might have something, but it'll probably be best as kind of like a combo punch. If we can get a victory with some other country and Brazil, then that's great. Because Brazil could be an actual lawsuit where
Right,
it's
yeah.
actually affordable there if we can crowdfund for it to do that. Yeah, most of this hasn't taken much money at all. It's mostly just working through existing agencies that are meant to, It's like the equivalent of the FTC in the United States, just with more teeth, that
Right,
sort of
yeah.
thing.
So, like, are you doing this all by yourself, or do you have like a small team, or did you hire a lawyer? Like, has it? I know it was probably just you when you started it, but
Well, it started off with me making a video basically asking for help from people on this.
Right.
And slowly, as people emailed me and that they might know something about, Sweden, or they might know something about Germany. And so, like, one by one, I tried to kind of compile this and see where our best openings were. And then I made another video asking for more help, got a lot more help. And then gradually, it kind of led to just sort of like an informal group that's been assisting me on this. If I had gotten no help, I still would be doing something, but it would probably be like 20%, 25% of what's happening right now.
slower.
It would have been just, not just slower, but less extensive. It would have been just what I could have figured out on my own, which were some things, granted. So, but no, I haven't. We don't have a lawyer hired, except just recently, where one person offered to cover the cost for it. It's not for a full lawsuit, but in Australia, we hired a firm to basically file an official complaint with their consumer agency in addition to the individual ones, because it was explained to me that having like an actual law firm file a targeted complaint carries way more weight with their consumer agency than just a bunch of individual ones, even if it's about the same issue. So I figured, okay, well, if this maximizes the odds that their consumer agency looks into this, then yeah, that's worth it. And the cost was, I'd say it's an affordable, like, fundraiser cost kind of thing. Because again, we're not doing a full lawsuit. We're just kind of like, this is basically a megaphone to their consumer protection agency. Hey, look at this. And then decide. It's still going to be up to the government to decide if this is legal or not, but we're going to make a pretty good case that, no, this is probably violating the law. And,
I
and
feel
we're
like
lucky.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we're lucky in that there's already an initiative by their consumer agency to to go after the games industry anyway. They were planning to do this for like late 2024, 2025. But they were mostly going to look at like targeting stuff towards kids and, the gambling aspect of it with loot boxes. So I figure if we can just piggyback onto this initiative anyway, we're in, so we're just trying to get to the point where it's more expensive to kill your game than not. That's the only thing we need to hit. As soon as we get that, I think we get in, so.
They just need to make it to where, like you said, when the game is being developed, there is a end of life, like, process in place where, sure, you're wiping your hands with it, but someone else can take that game that they purchased and still be able to use it or play it or host it, on their own, versus just killing it completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's like almost all other game problems in the industry pale to that for me, because it's like, well, who cares what crappy practices are doing if it's all dead anyway, With free-to-play games, we might actually be able to snare a lot of those also, because the games themselves are free, so you don't really have an argument to make there. But if you have a microtransaction, you buy like a skin or a sword, well, that's a one-time purchase, and that's probably considered a good of some sort, depending on the country. Others
It should be.
So in order to access your skin or your sword or whatever, well, you need the game to be running in some fashion.
Right.
So I think look, if we can get games that are sold, online-only games that are sold as a one-time purchase and free-to-play games, I think that's 99% of the ones that are at risk. That would not get us subscription-only games, probably, because they also like the double dip with microtransactions, so who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, that would get into hazy territory. But again, there are so few games that do that. There, World of Warcraft, the 2 Final Fantasies, EVE Online. There's one I forgot the name of, and some people were saying Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, I think, or Star Wars: The Old Republic. No, Knights of the is the offline one.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so few games though. It's like, okay, I can live with like half a dozen games not making it if we save hundreds, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, well, because obviously, like, they're not gonna go back to before a law is put in place and do anything about anything that's died prior to something happening like this.
Yeah, yeah.
But moving forward, there should be stipulations and laws to protect the consumers, just on multiple levels. But right now, on this level specifically, with what you're doing, like just so that another cruise scenario doesn't happen, because there's with all the games that are coming out that are online only, completely killing them, especially if they're charging people to play it, which even if it's free again, but that's an argument for another day. But I just think it's scummy, man.
I remember what I was gonna say. The other thing is the helps is occasionally you get companies that do this the right way, and they were online only. They realized, okay, well, we have to shut it down, and they patch it, and then you can either play offline or else have the kind of peer-to-peer multiplayer, and
Right.
private hosting, that sort of thing. Like a big one was Gran Turismo Sport did that. That was by and large online only.
Okay.
I think there was Mega Man X Dive was another one. Knockout City, that was an online one. It's like kind of a dodgeball type game.
I played that.
Marvel Avengers. I heard the game wasn't very good, but hey, this is separate from how good the game is.
Right.
We're trying to save all of them, including the crappy ones, so that the good ones get roped in also. So that's the Stopkillinggames.com. That's the only part you need to remember. You can ignore
Link in
me
the description.
entirely.
Link in the description. Stopkillinggames.com. You don't have to watch his video, my video, nothing. Stopkillinggames.com. It's all there. I'd like to thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy with the campaign, wanting to do your own thing. The time zones are weird. So I really appreciate you taking time to get on here and do this. And we're going to get everybody over to Stop Killing Games that I can. And hopefully more large YouTubers like Asmongold or Penguin Zero or whoever are going to cover this stuff, man.
We may get lucky, and for all I know, it's already a foregone conclusion at this point, because with what we've been doing, we get this stuff to the agencies. Once government officials are looking at it, I have no control over what happens.
Right.
It's just getting in the door to begin. There's some things I can boost and kind of keep moving along, but I'm optimistic with where it's headed, I guess. But we'll see. I'm not taking anything for granted on it, but it's not as essential to get maximum exposure as it was, because I could have seen this had like 10% of what's happened, and I would have still kind of moved forward with it. But we'll see. This month has been a lot of like tying up loose ends. Is a lot of it. Right now, the longer this goes on, the less important I am to this. So that's great, because again, it's out of my hands. I'm
Once
not.
it goes to the right officials and stuff, yeah.
Exactly. So.